Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take the knowledge you're looking for, your sources, your research, and aim to give you, well, the quickest path to really getting it. Today, we're tackling something really fundamental, I think, in communication. That tricky line between being polite and maybe accidentally coming across as rude, especially in English. And if your goal, like for so many of you listening, is to communicate well, respectfully in all sorts of settings, it's not just about tone. It's often the actual words, the structure. We're looking beyond simple translation here. We're diving into the social code that's kind of baked into the language itself. Okay, let's unpack this.
Right, and we're grounding this in a specific piece of content someone shared. It's excerpts from something called Polite versus Rude English Phrases. Specifically, we're drawing from a segment on the Learn and Success YouTube channel. It's episode 81, apparently focused on phrases you need to sound respectful and crucially in different situations. So our mission today, really, is to get at what you need, not just a list of phrases to memorize. No, it's about understanding let's call it the strategic framework. Yeah. The thinking behind the phrases so you can adapt, how you handle requests, disagreements, whatever it is, to show the right level of respect. And it really is about understanding the mechanics of deference in English. It's surprisingly formulaic, actually.
Okay, so the title itself, Polite versus Rude English Phrases, implies we're talking about specific things you say, right? Learned units. So what is the basic difference, mechanically speaking, between a blunt, maybe rude phrase and one that sounds, polite and cushioned? Is it really just sticking please on the end?
Oh, definitely not. I mean, please is sort of the entry ticket, isn't it?
Yeah.
But often it's nowhere near enough, particularly in more formal settings where with people you don't know well. What's really going on, I think, is that the polite structure is designed to minimize the imposition, the request itself, the ask. Puts a bit of a burden on the other person. Politeness is the linguistic work you do up front to kind of apologize for that burden.
Yeah.
And you see that work happening through specific grammatical tools. A rude or very direct phrase is simple, efficient, often an imperative, like send the report. Boom. A polite phrase, though, it uses things linguists call hedging, like maybe, perhaps. It uses modal auxiliaries, could, would, might, and often subordination, making the request part of a longer, less direct sentence.
Okay, break that down a bit. If I just say, I need those figures now, that feels pretty direct, maybe rude, depending on who I'm talking to. How does that linguistic scaffolding, as you put it, change things?
Right, good example. Let's build the polite version. So instead of a direct command like, I need, you'd soften it with a modal. I was wondering if you might, or I could perhaps, see, less certain, less demanding. Then you add hedges, if you might possibly be able to. And often a conditional clause that gives the other person an out or acknowledges their time. Send over the updated figures perhaps sometime this afternoon, if that's not too much trouble. Right. The difference is huge, isn't it? I need the figures now versus I was wondering if you might possibly be able to send over the updated figures perhaps sometime this afternoon if it's not too disruptive. The polite one is way longer, full of options, deference. It's shifted from a direct order to a kind of nested suggestion.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though, and probably for anyone listening who works in a fast-paced place. I mean, isn't that just incredibly inefficient, using 25 words when maybe 5 would do? In today's workplace, that kind of padding could seem weak, couldn't it? Or just like you're wasting time. Why prioritize that social stuff over just getting things done quickly and clearly?
That's the absolute core of the issue, yes. And it forces us to see the difference between, let's say, linguistic efficiency and social efficiency. Yes, send the report is linguistically very efficient, quick, clear. But what's the potential cost?
Okay, I see where you're going. The cost is damaging the relationship, maybe? Or just sounding disrespectful, which has knock-on effects?
Exactly. If we pull back to the bigger picture, that longer, more complex, cushioned phrase, it's an investment. It's protecting the social capital between you and the other person. It manages hierarchy, expectations, and importantly, it gives the listener a clear, low-risk way to respond, maybe even to say no, without having to be blunt themselves.
Yeah.
So that linguistic inefficiency, it's a trade-off. It buys you social fluency, cooperation down the line.
Right. So the wordiness isn't just fluff, it's strategic. It's
Yeah.
managing social risk, especially when there's a power difference or just professional distance.
Okay, and that leads us perfectly into the next bit, that key phrase from the source material. Phrases to sound respectful in different situations. That context piece. Precisely.
Yeah.
Because that's the dial, isn't it? that determines how much cushioning, how much deference you actually need. The fascinating thing here is realizing politeness isn't some fixed standard you apply everywhere.
No, it's entirely situational. It adapts based on, I'd say, three main things: the social distance between speakers, the urgency or weight of the request, and the medium. Are you talking face-to-face, email, Slack?
Can you give us an example how those variables change the amount of politeness work required?
Sure. Let's say you need a colleague, Sarah, to look over a draft. Sarah sits near you, your peers, you talk all the time.
Okay.
You might just say, hey, Sarah, could you give this a quick look when you get a sec? Pretty minimal hedging, right? Efficient, low social risk, totally acceptable. Okay, now same request, reviewing a draft, but it's for the senior vice president, Mr. Chen. You barely interact with him, and you need to ask via email.
Right, totally different ballgame. Totally. You cannot use the same phrase. You have to ramp up the deference significantly. Dear Mr. Chen, you start formally. I hope this message finds you well. Maybe acknowledge his busy schedule. I understand you have many pressing priorities. Then the request itself gets heavily cushioned. But I was wondering if you might possibly spare a few moments of your valuable time to perhaps cast an eye over the attached document at your earliest convenience.
Wow. Yeah. The structure is completely different. Simple modals aren't enough. You've got these honorifics like valuable time, subordination, the formal opening and closing. It's all signaling status recognition because the situation high-status person formal channel like email demands all that extra linguistic effort.
Exactly right. And then think about the other end of the spectrum. A quick Slack message to a teammate you work with closely. The deference plummets. Linguistic efficiency goes way up.
Yeah, you might just type draft ready for review, or even just FYI with the file.
Right. The context, the situation, dictates that speed and low formality are not just acceptable, they're expected. High deference would actually feel weird there.
And that insight, I think, is the real aha moment for anyone learning this. You realize, okay, I wasn't necessarily bad at English, I was just using the wrong social setting on the dial. You need to learn how to dial that deference up or down based on who you're talking to, where you are, how you're communicating.
Perfectly put. And that brings us to, well, how this kind of knowledge is best delivered. The source mentioned it's a YouTube episode, a video.
Which makes sense, actually. For something this nuanced, video seems like a really good choice, especially if you're trying to pick up these protocols quickly. It's more than just the words.
Oh, absolutely. The value of video here is huge, pedagogically speaking. Because politeness in English isn't just the words you choose. It's deeply connected to prosody, the rhythm, the intonation, the stress you put on words.
Right. And nonverbals, too, presumably.
Exactly. You could read a perfectly constructed polite phrase like, I was wondering if you might possibly say it with a really flat, aggressive tone.
And it completely backfires.
Totally nullifies the politeness. So a video format lets the creator actually show this. They can use little examples, maybe role play the rude version versus the polite version. You see the difference in facial expression, maybe a softer tone, slightly higher pitch, less volume, more open body language. All the bits that need to go with a complex sentence to make it land correctly socially.
Okay, so the medium itself becomes part of the lesson. It captures the whole package, the script, the delivery, the nonverbals all at once. That makes a complex social skill feel much more digestible, maybe easier to remember when you're actually, in a real conversation feeling the pressure.
Precisely. Faster recall, better application.
Right. So we've looked at the mechanics of polite language, the grammar of deference, and how critical context the situation is. Let's try and synthesize this. So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Well, I think it boils down to a couple of key things, drawing from this type of source material. First, sounding respectful in English often relies on predictable, learnable patterns or formulae. You really do need to get comfortable with that grammar of hedging, modals, indirectness. And second, how much of that polite machinery you use isn't fixed. It's highly conditional. You have to constantly adjust based on the social risk, the formality, the relationship, the medium. It's a dynamic process.
And the practical application is pretty immediate, isn't it? You can start thinking right now about your own communication, verbal and written. Am I using peer-level directness when I should be using more deferential language for someone senior? Or maybe vice versa. Am I being overly formal on Slack?
Exactly. It's about auditing your own output against the context. Which leads us to a final thought, something for you to mull over. We've established that this polite language, while maybe linguistically inefficient, is socially efficient. It manages relationships. So think about this. When you consciously choose that more complex deferential phrasing, the one that gives the other person an easy out, are you just being polite? Or are you actually doing something more subtle? By demonstrating that you've mastered this complex social code, by carefully managing the interaction, are you perhaps subtly gaining influence? Shifting the power dynamic not by demanding, but by showing superior cultural competence and controlling the social flow, that mastery itself. That means it's a different kind of power, something to consider.
That's a fascinating question to end on. Is deference actually a form of control? Really interesting. Well, the difference between just communicating and communicating effectively definitely lies in these nuances. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the language of respect and deference. We'll catch you next time.